Hi everyone, this is Katie Armstrong, licensed immigration advisor and principal at Into-NZ on Friday, 7th March. I'm doing this because on Monday we're about to get a whole load more changes to the accredited employer work visa scheme. So if you're feeling dizzy with all these changes, then don't worry, we've got your back. I've done this deck for you to capture what's been going on right up until now and what's happening on Monday. I've coded things to what's relaxed, what's tougher, what's new, what's unchanged. You will see that mostly what's happening is relaxation. And the reason why is because, remember, last year, April, the minister had to put a severe foot on the brake because we'd had such rampant numbers with the accredited employer work visa scheme when it opened. Now's the time to be taking the foot off the brake because we have seen the numbers tumbling and we need to get back into balance. So I'm very happy with the changes that are coming. I'm just going to run through with you what those are. And I will try to be brief, but there are some intricacies here, so bear with. I have also done a downloadable PowerPoint so that you can go away and read at your leisure. Back in January, let's start there. We already had some good things happen. They took away those fairly tedious employment modules that employers were struggling with, all gone. Instead, these accredited employer work visas, when they're approved, now come with a link to some employment law rights. So, you know, that's the end of that, really. Second change back in January was just one affecting what we call triangular employers. In case you're interested, those are employers that hire migrants under their name, but then they farm them out to third-party companies. They're mostly sort of recruitment companies, or known as labour hire. Anyway, in the construction space, they had to have 30% of their staff Kiwis. That's been relaxed to 15% because obviously there was some pressures there. Also in January, and this is something I'm very happy that happened, is the government announced digital nomad working rights. I mean, it was clearly a bit crazy that you couldn't just open up your laptop and be working legally when you were here visiting. In the modern world, it's what everybody does, and this has now legitimized that. It's not a work visa that they've introduced because that was going to be too complicated, so they've just said anybody who's got a visitor visa gets automatic digital nomad working rights, but there is a maximum duration of 9 months. Back in February, we also had another change, which was a little bit of a toughening. That was around how much you needed to earn if you're on an accredited employer work visa and if you can support your partner. And the wage threshold went up to $26.85 an hour. Just to explain fully, not every worker gets to support a partner into New Zealand. The ones that cannot are those that are in skill level 4 or 5 jobs who, unless they are meeting the green list or earning 1.5 times median wage, and the 1.5 times median went up for these purposes to $33.56. $50.34 per hour. That's the new 1.5 median, pretty high. Now, focusing on what's coming on Monday, and I can assure you that immigration's been running around ragged behind the scenes, changing computer systems, training the staff, trying to get their heads around all the intricacies of these changes. Yesterday, we had a webinar with Immigration New Zealand as professionals. There were over 70 questions asked, which does indicate how complicated things can get. Most of which immigration were able to answer. I thought they were actually very well prepared this time, some of which they did have to take away to be answered later. But probably the most significant change of all is the removal of the median wage requirement. So if you remember, you know, we've had basically from 2022, the median wage was introduced as what we call a proxy for skills. So instead of having to assess what skill level a job was at, it was all about the wage. The wage dictated how long a visa would be for, whether you could support family, etc. What they're doing now is taking that away and going back to what we used to have in pre-COVID days, which was just market rate. In other words, an employer can potentially get a job check on any wage as long as it is the market wage. Now, in some cases, the market wage might be higher than the median wage, but in some cases it may be lower. And the government has recognized here that it was a little bit crazy to force employers to pay a higher than market rate in lots of cases to get a migrant worker. So we ended up with workplaces where you had a bunch of Kiwi workers earning less than their migrant counterparts just because that was the only way to get them in on a visa. So there will be weirdnesses moving forward, because there'll possibly be situations where you've got a migrant already on a visa earning more than the market rate, and now the employer wants to offer less, and so there'll be disparities. But you're always going to have a period of transition when you're trying to make a change. So anyway, this is basically a relaxation. Now, crucial to know is that this business of market rate needs to be understood. What is market rate? Well, that's going to be something that you, the employer, have to prove. And those of us who've been working a long time in the industry know that in the past there were a lot of arguments about what's the market rate. But essentially you have to have evidence either from an industry source or from some website that tells you that you're paying within market rate. I mean, it might be that you've got Kiwis working for you that itself reflects what the market rate is. So, you know, immigration has said yesterday, well, we will be coming out with further advice on the sorts of information we will be looking at. But yeah, it'll be whatever source that you can provide to support your claim. Now, the other thing that's reduced or relaxed down from Monday will be this minimum skills test. So at the moment, just to fully explain this, migrants have to meet a minimum skills test. They also have to meet what we call the suitably qualified test, and they have to separately, in some cases, meet an English language test. The only thing out of those three things that's changing is the minimum skills test. So a lot of employers have said to me, does this change mean no more English tests? No, it is still going to be required for those skill level 4-5 jobs. What's changing is the minimum skills. Instead of having to have 3 years minimum experience, it can be just 2. And I think this will help you understand it. I mean, in the country, we've got a lot of workers who came into New Zealand with no skills, no particular proof of experience or qualifications. They've been working now for 2 years. They're perfectly good in their jobs. The employer wants to keep them. Some of them were unable to extend their visas just because of not having that extra year. That's all gone away. So please don't think that this minimum skills, though, is the only test. You know, they're not going to accept, for example, that someone can be a manager necessarily on just 2 years of experience. You know, there's also what is in that job check. What did you, the employer, ask for in your job check? If it's more than 2 years, the migrant has to meet that higher standard. The other thing that's changing on this slide, which is again a relaxation, is instead of giving out 2-year visas for the skill levels 4 and 5 and expecting them then to go through yet another visa application to get 1 more year, they'll get 3 years straight off the bat. So that's sort of a swings and roundabout. We're kind of back to where we started. So that's all good news. That could, for a lot of people, mean a second job check's not required. It will also mean for the worker not having to pay another whole load of money to get their visa extended. Now I'm just going to move that, and yeah. So here is a really interesting slide because and this is quite exciting to those of us that care, from Monday, there's going to be some jobs that, as of today, Friday, are considered low skilled 4 or 5, that are going to be upgraded to skill level 3. So what they're actually going to do is, from Monday, there's going to be something called Appendix 7. It's a new Appendix 7. It's going to have the jobs that are in that left-hand column on there, and it's going to have the jobs that are in the middle column on there. These are newly recognizable as skill level 3, and it's going to have some pretty far-reaching implications for a lot of people. So let's have a look, for example, on the left-hand side there, cooks. We've got hundreds and hundreds of cooks in the country. Some of them have been coded to skill level 4. From now on, they will be allowed to be considered skill level 3. What does that mean in practice? Well, it means a whole load of things. It means they can get up to 5-year visas, not just 3. It means they can potentially, if they meet those remuneration thresholds, support partner and children. So that's hugely important. So the same applies to those pet groomers, kennel hands, nannies. You know, goodness knows. It's interesting how these skill levels work. But anyway, scaffolders, that's an important one, slaughterers. Just to give you a little bit of context around that, the reason those jobs are being upgraded is because we will be transitioning to this new job classification called the NOL. That's going to replace the ANSCO. I could spend half an hour talking about the NOL because I've had extensive dealings, but don't worry, I won't. But just so you know, all of those jobs in the NOL are a skill level 3. So that's why, in advance of using the NOL, they've gone, right, okay, we'll have these now, please. But actually, it's interesting because since looking at this, I have discovered a whole load of jobs that are also in the NOL as new jobs that are also going to be recognized as skill level 3. Duty manager in hospitality being a skill level 2 job that's new. Food and beverage supervisor, that's going to be a skill level 3. There's a whole load of other supervisory roles in manufacturing that are going to be skill level, I think 3 or 2, I think 3, which at the moment are not on Appendix 7. They're not going to be on there, but at some point when we get the NOL, those will also come online. So lots happening in that space. Those jobs in the middle, all your plant operators and excavator operators, forklift drivers, etc. Immigration has said, right, we're also going to put them onto this Appendix 7. They will, in certain situations, be able to be recognized at skill level 3. That's basically if they need 3 years experience or a level 4 certificate. I don't know that there is a level 4 certificate for those jobs, but certainly 3 years experience would raise them up to skill level 3. So brand new, and those ones are curiously not in the NOL at skill level 3. I think the reason immigration will have plucked them out will simply be because those industries have been in the ear of the minister advocating for them and saying we need longer visas and more, they're clearly important jobs in our manufacturing and agricultural sectors. So on the right, that's not actually a change, but it's just sort of been reiterated that there's these jobs, certain jobs that in the ANSCO, at least for the moment, tell us already they're skill level 4, but if they need a level 4 qualification or 3 years work experience, they can be treated as a skill level 3. So that's not changing. And those jobs, they're not going to be part of the Appendix 7. They don't need to be because the ANSCO already tells the story. Now, I've put this as a mega relaxation. Let's see if I can move myself down here so it's clearer for you. Why is this a mega relaxation, and what is this? This is an amendment or clarification to when a job check can be reused to get someone a longer visa. There were some really complicated rules that honestly were sort of crazy in a way. to be frank, just too difficult to understand. And so they've changed them and made it much clearer. They're now saying pretty much everyone, not quite everyone, but nearly everyone who has either applied for or got an accredited employer work visa before 10 March, which is Monday, will now be able to extend if they need to extend and can extend using the same job check, the same job token that they've already used. The only ones that won't be able to do that are if they're in one of these 11 roles. I haven't written out all the roles, but they're basically the snow sport or outdoor adventure guide roles, or meat or seafood process worker roles, where those workers were not paid $29.66 per hour. They're the only ones that won't be able to reuse their job checks. So this is mega, 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 because there's going to be so many employers now not needing to do another job check just to keep their staff member going. So that's going to save on costs of advertising. It's going to save on the cost of the job check. It's not going to save on the costs for the worker to redo their visa, but at least that worker doesn't now need a whole new job check, and they don't therefore have to be biting their nails worrying, oh my gosh, my employer's going to have to re-advertise the job I'm already in. So, this is really far-reaching. So I've covered what's happening on Monday. I'll just give you a bit beyond, because in April we are going to get something that's never happened before, which is a huge relaxation. People who apply for an accredited employer work visa and go on to an interim visa whilst they're in that process, because the visa that they're on is expiring, are now all going to be able to start work in that job they're applying for, regardless of the what visa type they've had, really. So that's a big departure, because previously, if you're applying for an accredited employer work visa for a new job, you would have to stand down, not work while your accredited employer work visa was being processed. Now you will be able to start work. The only caveats here, one is that the time you spend working on that interim visa is going to count towards your MCS, maximum continuous stay. Remember, all migrant workers have a maximum continuous stay, which is currently either 3 years or 5 years, and this time will be counted towards it. From the employer's point of view, you might want to think carefully, do I actually start that worker until they've got their accredited employer work visa? Well, that's going to come down to whether there are any known risk factors. And you may not know, quite frankly, but you may want to get some advice from us around whether it's a good idea to start them, only to have to stop them if their work visa does not come through. On the whole, it's a good thing. It's all part of this messaging that New Zealand is now just taking that foot off the brake somewhat to rebalance things. Now, I'm going to just finish on something that's not to do with changes, but it may be of interest anyway. It is where are we at with the numbers? And it's quite interesting. So firstly, our accredited employer numbers have fallen from their peak. Really not surprising. Some have been struck off for bad practice. Some have simply not renewed accreditation because they didn't feel the need. Some probably have decided not to get accredited because they had sort of bad feelings about the immigration system, which I really don't think moving forward they need to have, because things are now in flow and much more in balance. But anyway, there's the current number, 25,887. It was well over 30,000 at its peak. Now, the total number of AEWVs that have been approved since the scheme began is sitting at 141,873. However, honestly, it's severely fallen off. The peak of the curve would have been in 2023. Once though the brake pedal went down last April, those numbers started to tumble. So the third bullet shows you the story, because last month, for example, we literally only had 689 migrants offshore applying for AEWVs, as compared with 9,366 back in Feb 23. Huge difference. And last month wasn't even the lowest. The lowest was in October last year, when only 452 migrants overseas applied for accredited employer work visas. Now, none of this surprises me because of all these factors, the conditions in the labour market, the fact that there was already a pool of workers in New Zealand that employers have been able to draw on. Quite a lot of redundancies last year, so employers have been able to pick up those workers onshore. There's also partners they can pick up. There's people studying in New Zealand or on postgraduate visas. So, the need to go offshore and hire has been a lot less. But I think as this year progresses and we get into 2026, there will be a lot more hiring overseas again, because the pool onshore is pretty much drying up. A lot of workers have left. There's only a finite pool now onshore, so I think we'll start to see those numbers rise. I'm going to move on actually to that sort of last section, which are the number of residence applications. You might be wondering why I'm focusing on this, but I just think it gives you the whole picture of what's going on in New Zealand. So in terms of residence numbers, so far this year, which is actually, we're partway through a governmental financial year because it started only on 1st July 24. But these are the numbers so far. We've had 196 green list work to residents approved, 102 transport sector, that's bus drivers and truck drivers, approved. And last year they cut that route off. So there will be a tail coming through of people who meet their 2 years and then apply, but it's a finite number. And also a lot of those bus and truck drivers may not be able to pass the English language test. So, it'll be interesting to see how many actually convert to residents, but certainly not all. In the care workforce sector, we've had 265 approved so far, which is fairly low. Obviously more again will be coming through. That is not a finite number because that pathway to residence is still ongoing and alive. Skilled migrant 6 points category. This used to be our flagship, the skilled migrant. It used to be the biggest category, but now it's not. 1,169 approved, and interestingly, 158 declined. I'm signaling that because please get advice. That category is not simple as it was touted to be. That is a fairly significant number of declines, and because it costs $6,500 to apply, and I think the applications coming through moving forward are going to be the more complicated ones because of having to claim more skilled work experience where people can come a cropper. That's an area definitely where people need advice. The straight to residents, well, that's now dominating. These are your green list tier 1, mostly, doctors, teachers, engineers, and so forth. They now dominate. 4,452 so far approved. So that's a total 6,184 approved so far this year. And okay, we're only partway through a year, but these are significantly lower numbers than previously. So I'm going to end on what I think is coming up in the future, which will be further changes to the skilled residence program. The minister has been very public in saying she recognises that the trades have fared badly under the new skilled migrant category, which was changed in 2023. There are literally thousands of tradesies in New Zealand who are really valued by their employers, but who just sort of got written out of the possibility to get residence. And an awful lot of them were severely let down last March when a number of roles were supposedly coming onto the green list, such as your fitters and your machinists and so on. And then the minister said, no, pause, not going to do that, need to have a look at things. And that's where things are. So yeah, I think we can expect to see some changes around the skilled migrant framework to hopefully bring on more trades. And so if I can say one thing to the tradesies, and I do this because they are constantly worried about their situation in New Zealand, is do what you can to obviously prepare for the future by maybe extending your visas. And a lot of you will be able to, well, most of you will be able to reuse your job checks. And then, you know, hopefully this year we'll know more about, I think we'll know in the coming months what's going to happen with the trades. And yes, fingers crossed that some great decisions get made there. So anyway, to wrap, Monday will be a new era, and at Into-NZ, please, there is a button below where you can write a question to us, but we have many ways to be contacted. You can go to www.intonz.co.nz, use our contact details there to make contact. You can phone us, email us, WhatsApp us. You know, there's many different ways to get a hold of us, and we really pride ourselves on being available to anybody that needs help. So that's for me on Friday, 7th of March. Look forward to dealing with you all in the future.